Okay, that's like clickbait to the max, right? And it works, and I'm sorry. What I mean by ruining the content of my channel is it's going to change the course of the content of my channel. Because of what I've learned from using this camera during the Frugal Film project. This is a zero assistance camera. And what I mean by that is there is nothing in this camera that helps you expose an image other than the knowledge that you have about photography. There is no feedback from the camera. It is all you. It's terrifying, but it's fun. The only information that this camera provides to you, the photographer, is how many frames you have left and what settings you're using. It does not suggest settings, it does not recommend settings, it does not even hint at what the correct setting is supposed to be for both aperture, shutter speed, and focal. If you even have the slightest amount of knowledge of photography, this camera will teach you mountains about photography. And all you have to do is use it correctly. I don't even really know if I know how to use it correctly, but I feel like I've learned a lot about how this camera operates that I can at least share, okay? I've still got miles to learn about this camera and how it works. But that's the fun. That's the enjoyment of this camera, okay? And you don't necessarily need a Vito B, okay? All you need to do is find yourself a camera that does not have a light meter, a camera that does not have a rangefinder, okay? And a lot of the times these were cameras that were designed in the 50s and the 60s because they're an inexpensive alternative to some of the more expensive cameras that were out there. So this was like consumer level cameras, okay? But you had to be a smart consumer to use this. And you had to be a smart photographer to use this. And that's why this type of camera will help you learn photography in a way that is easy to understand. The Sunny 16 rule, right? Which is your ISO and your shutter speed should be aligned in value. 100 ISO film in this camera, we would set our shutter speed to 100. And when we are shooting in an outdoor, high lit environment, you're going to shoot it at 100 ISO, 100 shutter speed, and an aperture value of 16. And that will get you your Sunny 16 rule. The Sunny 16 rule is a good starting point, but it's not like the end of the Sunny 16 philosophy, basically, right? And that philosophy states that as you adjust, as your lighting decreases, your aperture value should increase. All right, so 16 is going to be for bright sunny days, right? So 8 is probably your best spot for like an overcast day, depending on the level of overcast. You start to get into your 4s and your 3.5s, and this is range where this camera is starting to reach its mechanical or its design limitations of photography. You can always then, if you feel that your scene is going to be underexposed at 100, at a shutter speed of 100, you can, you know, bring your shutter speed back by a stop, right? So that way you can kind of keep closer alignment to your Sunny 16 rule. But for the most part, I don't mess with the shutter speed. I just try to adjust my aperture or my exposure values using the aperture dial, and trying to kind of remember what you know, a 100 ISO f8 lighting environment looked like, and then just build that memory and use that memory to set the exposure for your next scene. So with the Vito B, you have no rangefinder system for your focus, so you have no real way to determine where you should be focused at, like distance wise, you know, because we're basically focusing light that's at a certain distance from the film plane itself. That's all you're doing when you're focusing. You're just kind of narrowing that light, you know, making it pinpoint. And the way you do focusing with the Vito B is through a system that's called zone focusing. Zone focusing with the Vito B works like this. When it's a nice sunny day like today, and we're shooting at our Sunny 16 rule, okay, so we have 100 ISO film loaded into the camera. We have our shutter speed selected to 100. We have our aperture value of 16 selected. Now we need to determine where our focal point should be. And you kind of do this by estimating your distance from the camera to your subject that you're photographing. In this particular case, let's pretend that we're photographing something that I estimate to be 10 feet away from me. So if that subject is 10 feet from me, I should dial this, because this is a representation of feet in distance, okay? So we're going to assume that the subject I'm shooting, I'm 10 feet from, okay? 10 feet is this mark here on this particular lens. I should have picked a better distance, a more, you know, measured distance, but let's just use 10 as an example. So I'm 10 feet from my subject. However, you'll notice that there are aperture values on this ring as well. And those aperture values, let me show. Right, so here's a better view of the Vito B's lens collar and the information that's displayed on it. So again, this is shutter speed. Out here is your aperture value selection. All right, and we can't really see that well in this, but you can see, you know, kind of where those values are. But again, we're going to be shooting with 100 ISO film, so we select a shutter speed of 100. Our subject is roughly 10 feet from us, okay? So to zone focus, what I would do is I would set this mark on our center line, okay? This is the point at which it's going to be most in focus. So at this point, 10 feet is extremely focused. But we're shooting with Sunny 16, which Sunny 16 allows us to be less accurate with our focus. We don't need to be pinpoint accurate with our subject at Sunny 16 because the aperture is doing a lot of the focusing for us. We just need to find the general distance we are from the subject, the zone in which we exist from that subject. And this is where zone focusing plays a huge role, okay? We need to understand how big those zones are, right? So for zone focusing, you'll notice that there's a 16 dot way down here, right? There is another 16 dot on the other side of this barrel in that same spot, okay? To focus the zone that I'm in, from the subject of 10 feet, I could put it there, right? And that will get us pretty close to perfect focus, or, you know, zone focused center on the subject. But at f16, I have all this room in my zone to play with. So anything in my zone that registers 4 feet to infinity is going to be in focus. Now, that's a huge range. That's a huge distance, right? So, I'm sorry, not 4 feet. Anything basically 5.5 feet to infinity is going to be in focus. 5.5 feet to infinity is in focus right now. That means that I could have underestimated or overestimated my distance from the subject dramatically, and I will still have a photograph that is in focus. Okay? That's how easy zone focusing is with a camera that displays it like this. Okay? All I have to do is make sure that I am in the zone of 4.5 feet to infinity, and everything will be in focus. I hope that this video helps you understand why a manual camera is so good at teaching you some of the most basic of photography principles, of teaching you the Sunny 16 rule, and of teaching you zone focusing. Those two aspects to photography are so important to understand, and I myself didn't have a grasp on that knowledge until I started using this camera. It literally teaches you how to shoot in those ways, and that's what makes it so much fun, because it's like, it is all you, right? You are the one who is in control of the exposure settings. You're the one who's in control of the focus. You have nothing other than your knowledge to guide you. And it's nerve-wracking and it's scary, but it is so much fun when you nail it. Or even when you get just remotely close. You don't have to nail it. You just get remotely close, and it's such a good feeling. I hope that this video was informative for you. I hope that you learned something, or you were at the least entertained. I mean, whatever. It's, you know, it's just fun for me to do. So, thank you.